The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And boy, do we have a guest for you today. He's the director of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, leading research professor, marketing scientist, and champion of evidence-based marketing, Byron Sharp. His books, How Brands Grow, Parts 1 and 2, have become foundational and chock full of the building blocks necessary for anyone hoping to be successful in the marketing and advertising industry. And that goes for all types of marketers, creatives, strategists, account managers, brand managers, and beyond. The Ehrenberg-Bass Institute studies and other books, most recently Better Brand Health by Jenny Romaniuk, are all vital findings that can help you become a stronger marketer at any level. The work Byron and his team are doing is pretty extraordinary, and it was an absolute pleasure to have him on the show. And I'm not quite sure if he deserves the unofficial title of the Dark Lord of Effectiveness. So I'd listen in as we break down the discoveries Byron and his team have made and why they do it, concepts like test and learn, reading between the lines within data, and the future of television. And this week, I'm your host, Cooper Kolvik. Kick it, Mikey. Byron, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on the show and really appreciate you taking the time.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to the questions.
I always start off the show with my guests breaking and entering stories. So I'd love to start off with how you found marketing and what got you to where you are now.
I thought I was going to major in management at university, and I found that a bit pseudo-scientific, actually, overly academic. And there was this marketing class where they talked about, the purpose of businesses to, do stuff for people, customers. And, all this needs to be, so many decisions need to be made about, what products we have, how we get them to customers, pricing, etc. And I thought, oh, right, well, this is business. And that's what I came here to study. So then I fell into marketing.
Once joining the marketing industry, of course, you've since become a prolific professor of marketing science and champion of marketing effectiveness, and you're directing a lot of incredible work out of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. How did you move from being a marketer to being a marketing researcher and kind of changing the way marketing works across the globe?
Well, again, I sort of fell into it. I was, for a short period, marketing manager for a company that commercialized the university's technology. So that taught me a lot about, it taught me that the real world wanted discoveries, and the business school wasn't doing that. It was more the chemical engineers and pharmacists and things like this. And I thought, well, that's what we probably need to do in business school. So I started doing research and sort of fell into academia there. Didn't know any different, I think part of the success of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute is partly because we didn't go through like an American Ivy League type thing where we were told, you must do research this way, you must publish in these journals, and, play the sociological game of making sure you know the editors and things. We had the audacity to just want to make discoveries that mattered to the world rather than impressed other academics. And that turned out quite well, actually.
It seems so far. Clearly, there are others like you, or you've inspired generations or folks to kind of do similar work in various different levels, where now you have agencies and even in-house groups who are building their own marketing science teams and groups. I'd love to hear your take on that and where that role lies within the marketing system.
Well, I hope that's true what you've just said. I'd like to think that we are encouraging marketers to be more like scientists, being open-minded and skeptical. I'm not sure. The term marketing science is used in sort of two ways. One is the sort of stuff we do, which is like the science you read about at high school. We go out into the real world and we look for, patterns, we look for things that repeat and weird things like that. And when we beaver away at documenting this over and over, which is just classic science. But there's another term, which is not really marketing science at all. It's marketing engineering, which is playing around, trying to optimize things and stuff. And so you've got people who are very quant oriented and, there's some science in that, but there's also a lot of stuff that's, I'm quite skeptical of, people putting on white coats or reporting numbers to 6 decimal points and things. You remember the Thomas Dolby, song, She Blinded Me with Science?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. If it's scientists never or should never. I was pointing out to someone else. Actually, it was another podcast that science is quite punk. It's very anti-establishment. It's show me your evidence. I'm willing to believe anyone if they show me the evidence and logic, but I will not believe you just because you are, the king or the queen or the pope or whatever, or you're an eminent scientist. That's really anti-science, that. And so I don't like the stuff that is, baffling me with science. Or like, oh, this is too complicated for you to understand, or it's a huge data set. We can't reveal how we did the analysis. That's not science.
That's interesting. I think that was the Looking Outside podcast, and heard you discuss that. And I guess that makes me curious because a sentiment, at least with marketers in the US and in my experience, that oftentimes strategy and words like effectiveness and digging into data can be used in two ways. One in which, like, the term data-driven insight is just the buzzword that kind of used to make a client or team feel like something more, and the other is kind of the opposite, where data hinders creativity. Obviously, there's a world where these two meet, and a lot of that is outlined within the work that you're doing. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think the fundamental discoveries of marketing science have been very pro creativity, and they help, you be creative because they provide some guidelines, and they tell you about a whole lot of things that, they tell you what does matter and what doesn't. And that's really useful. But yeah, the marketing engineering stuff can be, yes, it can be, I think, just trust us. Just trust us and don't deviate from doing this, that's not so good for creativity.
When you're talking about the marketing engineering side, are you kind of talking about the performance-based marketing that as a buzzword that or term that people will use when you're discussing very, minute metrics and changes on a lower level?
Yeah. And using, computer algorithms to buy programmatic advertising space and things like this. This is sensible when we have, 1 billion websites and we can't, buy them all ourselves. We need to automate stuff, but we don't need to automate the thinking. We still need to know what we're trying to achieve with our advertising. And we need to stay skeptical. We just had a researcher present in the Institute, and he was showing, some tests of things like third-party data and things. And even just simple things like, we only want to reach females, right? How well did it do that? Well, 50% females. Like, actually, that's, a blindfolded monkey could have done that. No, it was a very sophisticated computer, right? But it was only as good as a blindfolded monkey.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. A
a lot of marketing people are not very numerate. They come from all the creative side and things. And that sometimes means they just get led astray by other people. They're just baffled, right? Someone puts some algebra up and they go, "Oh God, I don't know. Must be right." That makes you very vulnerable.
Almost like, I guess this is kind of the opposite way of it, but have you seen the diagram with the new Pepsi logo and all of the different intricacies and kind of crazy lines everywhere, and how the
Oh,
yin
yeah.
and yang is in there?
Yeah.
And I don't think I could name them all, but
Yeah.
at least from my understanding, the strategy side of the world, or even the data side, is often used either a metric or number like you just mentioned that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, or you have that massive data set and almost drown the listener with um, uh, numbers in that sense without really providing much value.
Yeah. A wise professor colleague of mine once said that when he was a young academic, when someone was presenting something and he couldn't understand it, he felt that it was his fault. But as he got older, he realized that if someone's presenting something and I can't understand it, then it's their fault. Maybe they don't understand it either. And I think there's a lot to that. People who they might sound terribly intelligent or confusing, it's often because they are confused. So I think I'm looking through the reviews on Amazon and things. There's a few people who say, and how brands grow, "Oh, there's a lot of data and numbers in it." But most people say, "Oh, wow, this is really understandable." And that's what I tried to do. You know,
I mean, you've absolutely created um, two books that, in the most digestible way possible, can distill all of that data and insights into, kind of like you mentioned, like a sandbox for creatives and marketers to play in, or at least a more updated sandbox than we were in before. And as you spearhead a lot of this research and um, are sharing a lot of it with the world, where would you say the marketing world is right now in its understanding of itself? Are we still geocentric and the sun is revolving around us? Have we moved on to being a heliocentric age, or are we within that helical motion of us revolving around the sun and us hurtling through space?
well, there's a lot of myths, and they still die hard. Yes. Um, there are people who go, "Oh yeah, I've read How Brands Grow," and then you really discover that maybe they only read the first few chapters. So there's still a lot of learning to be done on some of the basics. But I'm optimistic. Like this is an exciting time to be in marketing. It's a lot more exciting than when I was a young student. We didn't have, I was totally unaware of these discoveries. Absolutely unaware. I used to say it's like what we wrote our university textbook. Because I used to ask marketing managers, "So you went to a good university, you had your textbook, probably Philip Kotler's textbook, whatever. Now you're actually really in a serious marketing job. Do you ever go back and look in your textbook?" And they'd be, and I totally understand, because there's just nothing there, is there? You can't answer any marketing questions by going back to your textbook. So we wrote a textbook that actually had, evidence in it, and radical. It had a whole chapter on media, not just a page. It has whole chapter on shopper behavior. Like you would think every marketing textbook would have this, right?
I
You
mean,
would.
yeah, I would have expected us to have been farther along, and me as someone who's been in the marketing industry for 3 years, I think I was almost shocked when listening to you talk, and other folks like Ritson and James Herman, where you guys are preaching a lot of the same language, identifying new issues. You got Peter Field and Les Binet doing their own work that's identifying major things that I think I just kind of assumed the marketing industry had progressed farther than it had in my mind, at least.
Yeah. Well, I always joke it took doctors 100 years to start washing their hands, from the discovery that saved lives to the actual practice in hospitals. So we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much. It does take time. And notice all those names that you said are not Americans. So, in America, it's going to take a little bit longer to fuse.
Which I guess if we're saying that we're in a heliocentric era, or at least a few of us know that that's the truth. We have the truths outlined within how brands grow and the other materials coming out of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. What is holding people back from digesting and using a lot of this information and truly adopting it?
One thing is creativity. I mean, not everyone has the ability to read a finding, like a fundamental finding, like that brand growth depends on increasing the size of your customer base. There is no alternative. If you want substantial growth, you have to substantially increase the size of your customer base. There are a lot of people who could go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've got that, yeah, and then you go, right. So what are you going to do different? And and this is the stumbling. It's to have the imagination to think of like, well, what does that actually really mean for me? How would that translate to the decisions that we make on product portfolio, on pricing, on media strategy? And a lot of people find that translation thing, it's difficult. It takes time. And so that is an impediment. It doesn't sort of instantly tell you how to change your marketing. And then you get some people who are really downright unimaginative, and then they'll go, oh, well, yes, but you showed me that chart and that was in China. So I don't know how that applies to the US. Well, here's one in the US. Oh, that's a different product category. I don't know how it applies to me. All right, here is your product category. Oh, but my brand's not there. You know, some people just have blinkers, so they can't. So that is certainly a barrier. We used to always joke with the French. So we collected French data because the French would always say, but France is different. Well, it is. It's
Is it?
different. It has nice food and speaks differently. But no, the fundamentals of brand growth aren't different.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, you talk.
No, it's terrible though. It's partly terrible because in marketing, we always like to say we're the creative side of the business. We're so creative. But there are still a lot of marketers who go, tell me what to do. Well, use your creativity. Can you just tell me what to do?
I mean, it just applies directly to any strategist who's writing a creative brief, who can find better way. If you build the strongest sandbox you can to play in with all the toys, I guess it makes creativity issue much easier to create, I guess. But no, there's definitely been a sense within the US that a lot of advertisers and marketers are kind of throwing random creativity at the wall like spaghetti and seeing what sticks. But that there are laws and there are these different findings that can help us better direct how we're flinging spaghetti, I guess, is kind of how it feels at this point.
Well, yeah, we've done a lot of research on like, the creative elements that are used in advertising, and there is no magic formula or, the way people react to advertising is incredibly diverse and complicated. So, I mean, that's an discovery in itself. There is no formula, you can't just stick a cat on a skateboard and, there's no magic formula, but there's really substantial guidelines about how you would measure to see whether the advertising was working. And there's very good guidelines on how you would distribute that advertising with your media strategy. Very good guidelines. And so this all just increases our chance of success. And then we can just play at the creative. And, I was on a, called today, with a sponsor and explaining that, you use this method to decide to the creative's good. And then if it is, you put lots of money behind it. If it isn't, you pull it immediately and you move on, do another one and to test. Too many marketers do, we've got 17 different things running at the same time, and how are you going to tell which one's working? Yeah, that's a good question. Lots of spaghetti.
This like scatter spray technique, which I guess brings me to the topic of test and learn, and it's thought process that we use at my shop in the US, but it gets misinterpreted sometimes, I feel, and it's becoming a concept that I've seen used in two ways, but one being, well, we're testing and learning, so that means I can kind of do whatever, right? And then we just see what happens, versus actually defining a hypothesis built with reasoning and logic and findings within your market. What are some core things that people can think about to discern between those two?
Yeah. It's like marketers love saying they're experimenting. You go, okay, so you tell me about your experimental design and the control and how you're going to insert. Oh, no, we're just doing stuff. Right. Okay. Well, yeah. It becomes really difficult to tell what's working and what isn't. Yeah. And then there's the danger, of course, that you have some measures and they drive everything, right? And so that pushes marketers towards things like spending a lot more on physical availability in the sense of, Google search and, trying to catch people who are about to buy this week because we can measure it. Like, okay, that's great, but most of your sales this week are due to stuff that was done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And what that means is most of the stuff you do today is going to be driving sales in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And you're judging it by what it does for the people who happen to be buying this week. How many of them are here? About 0.1% of my customer base. Right. Okay. So the danger of the measurement, it's like that old analogy, isn't it? The drunk who's looking for their keys under the lamppost. And can I help you? Did you drop your keys here? No. Why are you looking here? Well, this is where the light is. Like, why are you judging your advertising on, clicks through to this? Well, it's because that's where that's the data I have. Demanding that we work out ROIs on stuff and things is just silly. Oh, for some things it's very possible, but for other things it's not. And we have to realize that.
And that's where the mental availability comes in, I'm sure. And then you break down the concepts of future demand. You've broke down the pitfall of harvesting that current demand without thinking about where or how that came from, and definitely led to a rise in the importance behind the performance marketing function, because you got to see the direct results. With that being the case, and that even being a newer phenomena within the last 10, 15 years ish, how outside of just the evidence that you're creating, can marketers gain more respect when they're at the table with the board or the C-suite to paint that full picture between the two?
I think in marketing we shoot ourselves in the foot a bit by saying things like, judge us on, we're here to drive sales. We're very business oriented. Okay, great, says the CEO. That's excellent. Right. So are you saying I should judge you by what you're doing today? on what sales are next month. Oh, no, actually, that's not very sensible, is it? No. And the CEO goes, no, it isn't, is it? Because the sales next month are going to depend on a whole lot of things like the weather and things. But also, if sales do break our seasonal trend line and are particularly good next quarter, your advertising people will say it's them, the pricing people will say it's them, the product development people say it's them, the sales department will say it's them. Some of our analysts will point out it's more what the competitors did. Or, it's very difficult to know. Give me some metrics that I can judge you on fairly. And here, this is where there's a lack of thinking in marketing. We don't go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, right, yes, I should come up with some metrics that are actually really appropriate to tell if I'm doing a better job. Yeah. Instead, we say things like, well, if I'm doing a better job, then everything will be better in the business. Our market share will be up. Really? Really? Do you control that? You really think your Instagram campaign is going to do that? No, probably not. Well, then why ask to be judged on that?
Do you think that's because the rules really haven't been defined? Like, do we live in a world where marketers didn't have, a seat at the table and are kind of clamoring for a way to get to that seat? And those kind of
Yes.
over promises are what
Yeah.
what got them there?
Yeah, I think that was. It was like, oh no, don't just treat us as the coloring in department. We drive business growth and things. And so judge us on that. Whereas a more sensible thing would be, we are about building the long-term value of this company. And guess what? The value of this company and its future, right, which is determined by the sustainability of profits into the future, right? I mean, the value of the company today depends hugely on what people think the future is going to be, right? I mean, look at the valuation of Tesla, right? It's not based on how many cars they're selling this year. It's based on the fact the market thinks in 20 years' time, Tesla's still going to be a car company and it's going to be a major global brand, right? So saying that, well, marketing helps build these assets of mental and physical availability, any CFO understands that. Well, they probably never thought about it like that. And so that's really good to tell them. But they'll get it, right? They'll go, yeah, okay, right. Okay. Well, then just show me that that's what you're doing. Yeah. Give me some evidence that your action this year is improving our mental and physical availability. If you do that, I'll be happy. And that's what we haven't done in marketing.
Yeah, that there's absolutely been confusion as to what its role is in business as a whole. Is that what, I guess, inspires or leads a lot of the work that you're doing with the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute? There's clearly a major need for the evidence and logic that you provide within this entire industry.
I don't know. The real world is a really interesting and weird place. And I think the people in the Institute have always been very sort of, we're skeptical. We don't, even internally, we criticize, our own work a lot. And so we're always like, is that true? Could that be true? Is that really true? Or is that just caused by that? Let's go find out. And so it's just discovering things. But that said, we do work in a university that's very pro impact on the real world. So it does motivate us also to see that the discoveries we're making are useful for people. Yeah. That's pretty motivating. I couldn't be the sort of academic who, at the end of their career, they said, what did you do? Just said, well, I published in this journal, and this journal, and this journal, and they're very highly rated journals. I'd be like, oh, okay, but did you discover anything? Did anyone use it? I'm a great fan of Louis Pasteur, the famous French scientist. I mean, he was very focused on industry problems, right? Like he was called in when, what was it, the silkworms in Leon were dying, right? And they weren't making silk, and so, it's like, solve this problem. And, the wine or the milk goes off, like solve this problem, which he did, Louis Pasteur, my goodness, his contribution was enormous. But he was really motivated to solve very important real world problems.
That's incredible. Someone who inspired me early in my career was Jacques Cousteau, and obviously his world problem is one that we're still fighting against massively with global warming, and largely his work within the oceans and seeing the direct effect of it. But
well, the important thing is Jacques Cousteau had gotten a boat.
He would go and do it.
And went out and looked, and we need to do this stuff. I remember as a kid, marching to save the whales for, raise money to save the whales for Greenpeace. But you need to go then. You have to start counting whales to know whether how big is the problem we think it is, and are we having an effect? If you don't count whales, you're never going to know.
It's very true, and I guess that goes back to what you're saying about folks having the blinders on, that, and if you're just looking for the keys under the lamp. But we can absolutely say at this point, as a researcher, you've surpassed the point of just being published in this area or that area, that it's making great waves. And
people actually buy the book. It doesn't sit gathering dust in university libraries. People actually buy it and even read it. Yeah, it is very gratifying.
Yeah, one where you get into the job, as an early marketer or advertiser, you're like, oh shit, I feel like I've read, or I need to gather something that gives me a bit of legitimacy or helps guide the way for me while I'm in this role. And I know How Brands Grow was a book like that for me, where maybe in university, it wasn't the top priority, but that absolutely switched after school was out.
Yeah. Well, I used to say that, like, as old marketers, we'd never like our grandmother to wander into a bookstore and look at the marketing section, right? So it's like, you'd be like, I mean, half of them are sort of thinly disguised self-help books. They're terrible. And so I hope that How Brands Grow has given us a little bit more credibility in the discipline. That, it's books that actually, it isn't just someone sitting down and having a thought and going, oh, I reckon I can sell that to people. There is actually real evidence there that anyone can go and check out themselves. It's not hard. Even if you don't have access to, like, Nielsen panels and things, it's not hard to do a simple survey and see and go, oh yeah, wow, what he says is true.
So it makes me curious, because I think to any planner, strategist, brand manager who's staying up with the latest trends and what folks like you are putting out, what would your advice be for the aspiring advertiser or marketer who has no idea that this is out there yet?
Right. Well, go and read How Brands Grow. That's a good, it was written. It was our earliest fundamental findings. Our board told us, write this book so that we can show to the CEO that we're making changes that are based on evidence, right? So, make a nice hardback book that we can give to the CEO. So yeah, every marketer should start with that. Let's get the fundamentals into your head. And from there, you can be a more creative thinker and a more skeptical thinker, and not be so much chasing, what's the latest trend in marketing, like, oh my God, what's our TikTok strategy? TikTok. Everyone's talking about TikTok. We've got to have TikTok. Do you have to have TikTok? Well, maybe you do. Maybe you don't. You should be skeptical, open-minded enough that you can know what questions to ask, rather than we are a bit, like magpies always chasing the new shiny. Yeah. No, I'm sort of laughing because you know what the next big thing's going to be?
I would love to hear what you think it's going to be.
Next big thing. And it's a pretty easy prediction, right? Because so much money is going to go into it. And that's going to be TV. It's because we had the rise of, well, we had YouTube, which is actually the first global ad supported TV network. And, but Mark has managed to disguise that by calling it digital or something instead. But you're like, it's TV, it's video ad supported. But then a lot of ad supported TV was in decline as people were watching other things and stuff. But now we've got Disney and Netflix, and they're all releasing ad supported versions. That means TV's back. It's going to start gobbling up lots of people's budget. And the next big thing in marketing is a whole lot of marketers going, oh, I don't know very much about TV, but it's now consuming more of our budget. Oh, so I think it's a pretty easy prediction. And it's sort of funny because it's, I don't know, what goes around comes around. We're going to be back to TV. I do remember a very senior, I won't say where, but one of the largest advertisers in the world saying, but basically when a whole lot of new digital media came out, saying to me, oh, the problem with this new media is, we understood TV, we knew about TV, but this stuff is a bit Wild West. And I said, really? You understood TV? What did you know about TV? And there was this sort of silence. So no, we didn't know much about TV in the old days. And so when TV's back, we better start doing some research and learning about TV.
Yeah, as if we knew a lot about it while it was large. But I mean, I completely agree. I guess it could be a world. It looks like it will end up just being a world where TV is what you get an on-demand version of it, I guess, at this point, where you're not waiting for air times. You get to choose what you're watching, but the ads are going to be all over it. But then, of course, you have to pay to play if you don't want to see it.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the consumers, this is fantastic. I mean, we get content when we want it, on the screen that we want it. It's a golden age, right? Billions of dollars are going into fabulous production. TV is, it's way better than it used to be. But it will become a model like it always had. You in the States, you had cable, the emergence of cable, right? And that started off as you just paid, and it really wasn't ad supported, but then it became ad supported and paid.
Then that's all it was. Yeah. Now we're repeating the cycle almost.
Yeah. It's the model that years all around the world. It's been the same for magazines, newspapers. The main thing is the high quality content area requires consumers to pay a bit directly and have ad supported. That seems to be the model that consumers like. They don't want to pay the full price and have no ads. Well, some people do, but a lot of people go, oh, I'll have some ads, but I don't want to have totally ads, so I will pay some money. And that model seems very, very dominant all around the world. And so that, when you observe something like this, it makes it much easier to make predictions. So I predict the ads supported version of Netflix and things will start to become really quite big.
Well, and just only supports the work around the fact that loyalty is a myth in some ways, and that people really do not give a shit about your brand as you love to say. But now we have a point where people can pay to get away from you. They don't want it that bad.
Yeah, but they want the content, and not many people are going to subscribe to Disney, Netflix. Hardly anyone pays the money to YouTube to take the ads away, do they?
I guess they have their own little ways of where you watch just enough and can skip around them, and that's good enough for people.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. And you'll see a lot more research coming out of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute on I was going to say ad avoidance, but not seeing ads, which It's amazing we're still researching this because, it's pretty obvious, right? Consumers don't see all the ads we put out. We Do people ever think that they ever did? There's I think recently a new provider has, built-in smart TVs that got a camera. They can watch people watching TV. And they announced to the world, about half the ads, people aren't actually watching them. Like this was this new thing. And I went, well, that's great. You've got that data, but you shouldn't claim it's new. Okay. We've known this for decades.
Well, and I feel that's similar to a lot of the work that we get from Ehrenberg-Bass. I can't imagine what else you're sitting on just outside of um, avoidance. If I mean, How Brands Grow has been around for 10, 13 years now. I know you just updated it in the digital version, but it's pretty incredible that maybe we are still geocentric.
I always knew How Brands Grow. I didn't think it would be a bestseller, but I did think it will sell for a long time, and I think that's probably pretty true. Yeah, but yeah, Ehrenberg-Bass will be doing lots more. We'll be doing a lot of more work on the small screen. It's the screen everyone has with them all the time. But there's a lot of ad avoidance on this, right? Which is just done with our brains. We're able to see stuff without seeing it.
It makes the problem all the more trickier and exciting to solve for marketers, I guess, is the way to tee it up for them. And I think to your point, that's where the creativity comes in, and that's where you can jump onto the James Herman bandwagon and the case for creativity and how resonating can really make such a large difference. And
there's also another sort of creativity, which is going, well, being humble and going, yeah, probably most people are only going to look at my ad for 2 seconds. Right. Okay. So I can either try to change that, or I can go, nah, you're only going to look most of the time for 2 seconds. Okay. How do I make it work in 2 seconds?
But I slaved away over it for weeks and weeks and hours and stayed up all night. It's amazing. They have to look at it for longer than that, right, Byron?
Yeah. So, then another approach is to be creative and go, all right, fleeting attention. Okay. Fleeting exposures. Okay. I can do that.
Well, attention is a super interesting KPI metric with Karen Nelson Field's work that's going into attention, and only going to become more important specifically for media planners as well moving forward.
I don't know. I see a lot of people selling attention metrics. It doesn't really match with what we know from the serious academic research, which says, yes, you need attention. Obviously, ad avoidance. If they don't see the ad, they don't see it. Right? They don't see it, don't hear it. Yeah. But you don't. So attention's good. So do you have more attention's even better? It's a bit better. But if we really, seriously, if we want to really chase attention, then we should put all our ads in Vogue. People do actually read the ads in Vogue. Cinema. People do actually watch all the ads in cinema. They'll watch 60-second ads in cinema. Wow. But would we do that? No.
Especially if people aren't even going to the theaters that much, at least in the US.
Oh yeah, theaters always had really low. It's very expensive. That 60-second exposure is really expensive. So, yeah, be a bit. We need to be a bit careful of chasing attention. It could just gobble up all our dollars and not be effective.
Well, the same with anything. It's all about the specific situation, the business problem, the human problem that you have to attack. And I guess, you could go that way with a lot of the metrics, where if you over focus on it, that all of a sudden you end up with blinders on too and lose sight of the whole picture.
Yep. Yep. The real world is a weird and complicated place. We should be very careful about, single theory, dominant theories. Everything works this way. Yeah.
In that
Engagement. We must have engagement. People must engage. They must click. Do they have to? Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
well, I think folks would like them to, but in that sense, and if we're taking your advice and being skeptical, I'd love to hear about, what else you're skeptical about right now and what you're hoping to crack soon.
Try to be skeptical about everything, as I say, even our own stuff. What particularly skeptical about? Well, I'm certainly, as you've heard, the idea that more data is always better is not true. Good data is good. It doesn't have to be. I love pointing out to people that if you're thinking of AI algorithms and things, well, Amazon has probably been at it for longer than anyone else, right? They've got fabulous computers, really big and awesomely bright people working for them. Well, have a look at what Amazon recommends that you should buy next. Pop on the website. How good are those recommendations? Not that good, are they? They recommend to me that I should buy How Brands Grow. And clever. You do know I have an author page, and your computer should be able to work that one out. So yeah, I'm skeptical of that. We need simple, important findings rather than massive, complicated data.
I love it. As we've discussed, for any aspiring marketer or advertiser, skepticism's key always. That test and learn doesn't mean you get to do anything. That focusing on any one KPI or metric can be to your detriment. And to your point, that all data is not important, that the data that matters is. Outside of those kind of core principles we've discussed so far, I'd love for your advice for any aspiring marketer, newly entered advertiser, to how they can bring change from within their organization as being an evidence-based test and learn champion, and what they can do to set themselves apart and help grow the next generations of the industry.
Well, I'm going to support Mark Ritson and say, getting a fundamental education in marketing is actually pretty important. Say reading How Brands Grow. Yeah, it is. I just before the pandemic, I met a new CMO. I'm not going to name the company because it's too embarrassing, right? But so they'd taken over as chief marketing officer, and this is, I will say, it was in the United States. So this person's people had arranged for me to come and visit. And so 2 days before I arrived, they gave a presentation to the CMO on some of the core, scientific laws. Okay. Apparently he found very, very interesting, right? Never seen this stuff before in his career, and which he told me, right, when we met a couple of days later. But I thought, you just got given the job as a very well-paying job, chief marketing officer at a very, very big company, and you didn't know about this stuff? Like, they'll be like, being appointed as, I don't know, cancer surgeon at a hospital, and you didn't have a medical degree, right? It's just like, wow. And I'm an optimist, and I thought, yeah, okay, I can imagine this. Well, this obviously just happened, right? But I don't think in 20 or 30 years' time that could ever happen, right? So in 20 or 30 years' time, the idea that someone could get a chief marketing officer job and not have read, at least this, that just won't have happened, right? So that'll be a big step forward. But as you say, we're not there yet.
No, and I think it was you that said that we're in an age of marketing revolution where
Yeah, we're coming out of the medieval times. We've got to be creative and skeptical, open-minded, but creative to think of, ways of solving problems. I love talking to my research students and saying, so you hear something like bees are dying, bee apocalypse. Oh no, right? Bees are terribly important for pollinating and for agriculture and things. And so, well, how would you work out if this was true? There are lots of different ways of doing this, right? I mean, one is, oh, geez, I'm going to have to count bees. Yeah, well, that would be our way. Oh, that's going to be really difficult. Maybe we can think of some technology that is, able to count bees, or we can do surveys and try to find out about for bee. Well, what is a bee farmer? Apiarist? Are they having more of their bees dying? But then there's wild bees as well. How would we work this out? Well, how about you look at honey prices? Well, because if we really are having a shortage of bees, what's going to happen to the honey price? Well, it's going to skyrocket, right? How do you supermo? Is the price of honey skyrocketing? No.
Mm.
Okay, then you've probably just solved it. And that was a really cheap, simple, and you didn't need a lot of data. You needed quality data, right? Which was a price signal, right? There's no way that can be manipulated, right? So it's really good quality data. Okay, cool. And we've just solved the problem. So, which is, yes, there are bees do get certain diseases and there are problems in some place, but the overall world population of bees is okay. Cool. But
That
that's,
was that was such a great articulation of almost like the reading between the lines problem that a lot of strategists and planners have, where they're sitting there almost drowning in
oh, right.
consumer data pieces where
Yeah.
it can often be simpler, and it's just focusing on what the problem is itself and finding a key indicator somewhere of what loops you back to what's actually going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the great, Snickers campaign, you aren't you and you're hungry, realizing that, a Snickers bar has peanuts in it. And so it's quite filling. You don't eat a Snickers bar unless you're hungry, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the campaign should be about hunger and then that great creativity of, when people are hungry, they get cranky, which is fun, right? That's a funny thing you can put into your ads. Fantastic. Great global campaign. Brilliant simplicity. Works and matches the brand. Excellent.
Yeah, you've likely gotten there once it becomes so simple that you can't really deny deny what you're looking at, and that's something that my team and I talk a lot about, of being or thinking like lawyers and being unimpeachable to some degree, but it's all about the application to your point, and knowing where to look. And I know myself and the industry are incredibly appreciative of the work you're doing and your teams are doing at the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. And Byron, I've really appreciated your time so far, and know you're busy, and want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been good fun. Go spread the word.